Tomorrow is going to be the 6th anniversary of Father Moon's ascension to the spiritual world, his death and ascension to the spiritual world. Let me fix this. And so I thought, of course, it's important that we spend some time today reflecting on that and remembering that, but also thinking about the legacy that's involved there. So I was reading up about legacies, and I heard this interesting story about a guy who was he was a jokester all his life, and he died in October, but he planned so that all of his friends would receive Christmas cards. And so the Christmas card said, when they got the card, it says, "Oh, here I am. I passed away, and I'm up in the heavenly realm. And I tell you, it's really something up here, but I can't tell you too much." But I did want to let you know, I was able to, I talked to the big guy himself and just really said, "Look, Christmas is just right around the corner. Please let me go down and write some Christmas cards, and, so my friends can get their Christmas cards." It's, and he really begged and pleaded, and he says, "The big guy let me do it. So I'm writing you now. And even though I can't tell you about how fantastic it is up here, I'm sure I'm going to see a lot of you very soon. Love, Clint." So that's one kind of legacy, right? We'll see you soon in the spiritual world. We're all going to be there. We're all going to arrive there. So I wanted to just reflect also about the legacy of Father Moon, just briefly. And we saw most of it in the video, so I don't need to repeat it. But thinking then, how does that apply in terms of our own legacy in life and what we're doing with our lives? So to begin with, Father Moon was born in this teeny tiny country in the middle of nowhere in terms of most people's thinking. This small little country in Asia that most people had just forgotten. And inside that country, he was born in the northern part, near to the Chinese border. And it wasn't North and South Korea then, it was just Korea. And he was born in the area around, it's the Pyongyang area. Pyongyang is the capital of North Korea now, and so that was like the district that he was in. But he was born to a farming family in, reasonably, poor conditions, but, that he's a farmer. And it was at a time, it was very low technology in Korea in the 1920s. And the nation was, at that time, under really a brutal control of the Japanese government. And so it was really a time of very difficult, great difficulties for the Korean people. So at the age of 10, his family converted to Christianity. And still, that's the time when in Korea the Christians are being persecuted a lot, even more than others, by the Japanese government. And Christians are being killed a lot. And so at that young age, and he writes about it in his autobiography, and I have a copy of, if you haven't read it or you don't have a copy of Father Moon's autobiography, A Peace-Loving Global Citizen. I have a copy for you. Please see me afterwards. I want to make sure you take one home with you. But around the age of 14 or 15 years old, he began asking these questions of God. He would go up to the mountaintop and he would pray, and sometimes praying all night. Why is there so much suffering in the world? If God is a good God, why is there so much suffering and so much terrible things happening in the world? And he prayed desperately about that. And I'm just going to read from his autobiography, because at the age of 16 in Korean counting, he had this amazing experience with Jesus Christ. So this is reading from his autobiography. "It was the night before Easter in the year I turned 16. I was on Mount Mudo praying all night and begging God in tears for answers. Why had he created a world so filled with sorrow and despair? Why was the all-knowing and all-powerful God leaving the world in such pain? What should I do for my tragic homeland? I wept in tears as I asked these questions repeatedly." That day, I saw early Easter morning, after I'd spent the entire night in prayer, Jesus appeared before me. He appeared in an instant, like a gust of wind, and said to me, God is in great sorrow because of the pain of humankind. You must take on a special mission on earth, having to do with heaven's work. That day, I saw clearly the sorrowful face of Jesus. I heard his voice clearly. The experience of witnessing the manifestation of Jesus caused my body to shake violently, like a quaking aspen leaves trembling in a strong breeze. I was simultaneously overcome with fear so great I felt I might die, and gratitude so profound I felt I might explode. Jesus spoke clearly about the work I would have to do. His words were extraordinary, having to do with saving humanity from its suffering and bringing joy to God. So he received this calling in 1935. He was about 15 years old. And it's amazing to think, how many of us when we were 15 years old were asking God, why is there so much suffering in the world? I know I was asking God, how come I didn't get the latest, bicycle? How come I didn't get I didn't get to eat the food that I wanted? And why do I have to eat broccoli? Those were the kind of questions at 15 years old I was asking God, right? So at the age of 35, he began this preparation for his mission and ministry. And he went to school and he studied engineering, electrical engineering, and even went to Japan and stayed in Japan. And according to our tradition, 1945 is when he began his public mission. And the day is the day that Japan signed its peace treaty at the very end of World War II. So that's the beginning of Father Myung's public ministry. Just 1 year after that, though, God calls him to North Korea. And at that time, Korea has been split into the North and the South, and the communists are control the North. And in communist North Korea, religion was being greatly persecuted, increasingly more and more. So it didn't seem like an obvious choice that someone preaching who's got a calling by God, well, maybe it is an obvious choice. Go to where Satan is attacking the most. So he went to North Korea in 1946. And he spent time in prison. The first time he was arrested for preaching and disrupting the public order. And he was taken to the jail and beaten until he was left for dead. His disciples found him and he recovered, and then he was out preaching again, and they arrested him, and this time they sentenced him to 3 years in Hungnam prison camp, which was basically a fertilizer factory where they had to dig fertilizer. And he was there for 2.5 years, and there's lots of stories to talk about this time. But at fortunately, the beginning of the Korean War, it was Douglas MacArthur and the invasion of Incheon, caused the opportunity for the prisoners to be able to escape. So eventually he escaped and worked his way down to South Korea, and by 1954 established the first form of the church, the Holy Spirit Association for the Unification of World Christianity. So that's the course. Even all this time up to here, there's so many stories to tell. But now, finally, he established a church, a mega church, right? Actually, this was what the first church looked like. It was built out of cardboard and mud. That was the beginning. But from 1955 to 1959, 700 churches were established just in that 4-year period. So a period of incredibly rapid growth. And then in 1958, he sent missionaries to Japan. In 1958, missionaries came to America. And it was in 1965 that he did his first world tour around the world. And then finally, in 1971, Father Myung, 50 years old, he moves the center of the World Mission Headquarters to the United States. So America becomes the center point for the providential work. And you heard about the speeches and the call to raise America up to fulfill all the hope that God had for America. So there's so many things in Father Moon's life, and there's lots to talk about. And I'm not going to go into detail with it, but I encourage you, this evening there'll be the Sungwa ceremony, will be memorial and blessing ceremony will be broadcast live, so you can watch it on the internet. And there's so many articles and videos and information you can find out. And if you have a chance to study, we dive much more into depth into Father Moon's life. If we think about the legacy of Father Moon, though, he did so many things that touched so many aspects. He wasn't just a religious leader. And as you saw in the video, the Family Federation is kind of at the core, but the blessing of marriage, which is not just for unifications, but for all people, to restore marriage. Education, established universities, Sun Moon University, and invested in so much in educating young people. World Relief, the International Religious Relief Federation Foundation. Interfaith projects like the Middle East Peace Initiative. Food and Nature, fishing and sports. Business and Industry, Tongil Enterprises, a huge manufacturer in Korea and Germany and in the United States. Science and Technology, Welcome, and a number of technological companies, even building car factories. World Peace, of course, the Universal Peace Federation and the Ambassadors for Peace program. Media, the World Media Association, and also the Washington Times and newspapers in South America and Korea and Japan and around the country, around the world. And then healing activities, hospitals, sports and arts. You saw some of the sports teams and activities, martial arts. So all these different areas, but the main mission of Father Moon was to create families of true love that God could dwell in. Now, in order for those families to prosper, we need an environment. So all aspects of life, all these different projects were about creating a heavenly environment for people who know God, who are trying to live a godly life filled with true love, can live and fulfill their purpose and the hope. So healing the world and comforting God's heart starts with having people that can make a difference in the world. So Father Moon, even though there's many projects and so many things that he did, the core of it was how to create people who know and experience God that can make a difference in the world. And that's us. Here's also a quote from Father Moon. He says, "My concern is not to leave a legacy that honors the name of the Unification Church. Rather, I am concerned about how I can leave behind successors who will carry on the tradition I have upheld." So Father led a substantial legacy, and Mother Moon is moving it forward for us to build on. But the question is what will our legacy be? And then reading from Father Moon's autobiography. Because we were born in love and lived our lives in love, love is also the only thing that remains with us when we are in our graves. It is important that we live our lives in a way that we can leave a legacy of love behind us. A life living for the sake of others. So when we reflect on Father Moon's life and his passing and the significance that it has for us, I think one of the most important things is what is our legacy of love in our lives? What are we doing and how are we creating and building that legacy of heavenly love? So it all comes down to the three great purposes of our life, right? To be fruitful, multiply, and have dominion. Genesis 1:28. Everything relates to the purpose that God originally designed us for. Lives of fulfillment. But legacy of love always requires a relationship, right? So our first purpose in life, to become a person of true love, well, that has to do with our relationship with God. In our loving relationship with God as our heavenly parent, and our relationship between our mind and body. And the second great purpose, to be fruitful, is our relationship with the people in the world around us. All the starting with our family, but then our community, our friends, our neighbors, co-workers, and finally our relationship with all the things in creation. How we create a loving relationship that God can find joy in caring for things in nature and creation, and having a loving dominion. And to accomplish these things requires us to make effort, to take action. So, starting with the first blessing, the first great purpose in our life, the question that we can ask ourselves is, who have I become and who am I becoming in my life? There's so many things for us to do, and the choices that we make, the things we do in our life, shape who we become, who we are. The beginning point, of course, who have I become in terms of my relationship with God, my Heavenly Parent? Am I investing in that relationship? Am I cultivating that relationship? Things for us to check for myself. That loving relationship, do I know and understand the incredible unconditional love that God has for me? And am I able to share that love with others? And is it just a two-way street? How's my relationship with God as my Heavenly Parent? Also, am I growing in my maturity of love? As children, of course, we're selfish, and that's not a problem. But as we grow and mature, our ability to love unconditionally, to care for others, and especially when we reach the position of becoming someone who can take care and responsibility for others, how much have I learned and experienced God's unconditional love so that I can then convey that unconditional, perfect love to the people in the world around me? How much have I matured? And then, how much have I perfected my own individual character? And we use the expression in the divine principle, the unity of our mind and our body. Basically, it has to do with self-control. My mind says one thing, and oftentimes my body doesn't want to do it. Even this morning, I got up early because, I have to get out there, I have to make some banners, and I should get gas in the car before I make it to church. So that means I need to get an extra 45 minutes earlier. Did I get up 45 minutes earlier? Well, the alarm went off. So that, I have a few years on some of you. And even at this age, I'm still wrestling with my mind-body unity. My mind knows what I should do, but I discipline myself. However, the more we do it, the more we get in, that was like a break in my routine. But fortunately, when we build a habit, like I get a habit and I have to do some exercise in the morning. I tell you, it's uncomfortable. First thing in the morning, the last thing I want to do is start exercising. But once I started getting into a pattern of doing it, it became much easier. It became, okay, my body just said, okay, we're going to do it. I surrender. And so I've developed that habit. So that relationship between our mind and body is that we should be a partnership. And in that partnership, we want to develop our gifts and our talents. So even though I would love to play the guitar like Peter does, or the drums like I've seen Aki or Keanu play, I would love to be able to do that. Or even piano like my daughter. The only way I'm going to get there is if I invest a lot of time and energy. And even if I have the talent for it, if I don't invest in it and develop my gifts, then I can't bear the fruit of those gifts. I can't use those gifts to make a difference in the world around me. So that's our first challenge, is who am I becoming? Where am I investing my attention, my resources, my heart to become? Am I becoming a person that's more loving, that can make a bigger difference in the world around me? Or am I just becoming a person who sits in front of the TV and just absorbs stuff? Just bring me my food and I'm going to watch this show, right? Or are we producers, people who are out there making a difference in the world? So if we think about the second great purpose, multiply in relationships with people, the question is, who am I loving? Who have I loved in my life? And of course, the first thing that we think, my beginning place is, did I love my family? My family, my friends, the community, even the world. Was I loving to the stranger, to people in my environment? And that's something that's it's a skill, it's a habit that we practice and develop. Loving and living for the sake of others. Am I thinking about, see someone that's having some difficulty, carrying a whole bunch of bags. Oh, can I be the person that helps out? That helps in just genuine ways. being helpful. Well, this challenge about, who have I loved goes beyond, and especially we know because of the understanding the principle, and there's so much healing that needs to happen in the world, that have I been able to love my enemies? Yeah, sometimes my family members might feel like my enemies. Give me that, give me that, give me that, especially when we're young, right? But the principle of restoration and healing for the world requires people who can love even the unlovable people, who can love even the people who are mean to me, who are thoughtless towards me, who are cruel towards me. How can I be a person that even loves those? Because the divine principle goes into great detail talking about the relationship between Cain and Abel. There was the first appearance of enemies within a family, right? Brothers. Cain, who feels jealous and resentful, and Abel, who's arrogant and clueless, and they kill, and results in murder. And that pattern all throughout history in our lives, we have lots of Cain and Abel opportunities, where we're the person who's feeling jealous or resentful, or we're the person who has the blessing, is not multiplying or sharing that blessing with others. So, who have I loved and how have I loved people in my life is very a fundamental part of the legacy of love that we're leaving in our lives. Our whole process of restoring love and bringing love where it's not. One of the most challenging things that I've been confronted with lately is just how unconditional am I in my loving? Especially I'm reading this book, Real Love and Parenting. I tell you, it's torture. I read through it and say, okay, how many times did I use withholding my love, withholding my approval, or even expressing disapproval, removing love as a means to say, oh, I'm helping them learn by removing love. When actually what that does, it just teaches them that they're not loved. But it's such an easy thing to do. It's the way most of us were taught, we learned. Discipline is, the discipline is, oh, I'm disappointed in you, right? But a child, hears that as not, oh, you did the wrong thing and you should correct that. The person feels that you don't love me right now. And that lack of love is one of the things that we're all struggling with. So even my enemy, who's doing mean things towards me, if I can actually see them from God's perspective, that this person is a person who hasn't experienced enough unconditional love in their life. Ultimately, the source of that love is God. God is the ultimate source of our unconditional love. This is the huge power of Christianity in transforming the world, is the ability for people to know and experience God as a loving God, a parent who loves them in spite of their sins, who cares for them and even died for the sake of them. That kind of desperate, unconditional love that God has. That transforms lives, transforms our lives. But we're being called not to just wait for God, but actually in real life. How can we be those representatives of God's unconditional love? Who have I loved in my life? The people who were nice to me? The people, my children, when they were good? How about when they were bad? Or the people who were mean to me? This is our challenge in being a person of true love, and the legacy of love that we're challenged with in our life. How do we love unconditionally? And the starting point is, it's hard to love unconditionally when we feel the lack of love ourselves. This is the fundamental key to the mission of the Messiah, to the mission of connecting us back to God, our Heavenly Parent, and making that foundation. And also to our relationships. So who were we there for? That someone who felt unloved, and we were able to be there to give them love, to help fill up their love tank. So then they were more able to deal with and even give love to others. So, who have I become? A person who knows and experiences God, who's developed my talents and my gifts. Who have I used that my abilities to love, to make a difference in life? This is the second great purpose in our life. And then thirdly, the third great purpose of our life is dominion over the world around us. What have I done to make a difference in the world? applied my creative powers, my creativity, my talent, my interests, all using these experiences to do something, to bring healing and a positive impact in the world around us. What are we doing? How are we expressing our love for nature and creation and the things of the world? So these three great purposes, taking our passion, our calling, our experience, and using it to make a difference in the world. But our legacy of love is built on these three broad areas. Who have I become as an individual truth body who reflects God's nature and God's love, and knows and experiences God as our heavenly parent, and has grown in our self-discipline, self-control, our mind-body unity. And then the second great purpose, who have I loved in my life? Not just the people that were easy to love, but how have I loved the difficult people and the challenging people in my life? And then the third great blessing, our dominion over the things in the world. What have I done to make a difference in the world? To use my gifts and talents and abilities to make a positive impact in the environment and the world around us. So, our legacy of love with God, with people, and with the world around us. So, investing in our relationship with God, quiet time, quality time, prayer on a daily basis, studying scriptures so we gave a perspective, God's heavenly perspective, investing in our relationships with people, even our enemies, even the ones when they're hard to love, and also investing our interests, our gifts, our talents, and making this world a better place. Father Moon's hope, and our true parents' hope, is that each of us will multiply and build on the legacy of Father Moon and Mother Moon. And there will be people of love who can bring God's love and healing to the world. Again, I just want to close with this from Father Moon's autobiography. Because we were born in love and lived our lives in love, love is also the only thing that remains with us when we are in our graves. We receive our lives in love, live by sharing love, and return into the midst of love. It is important that we live our lives in a way that we can leave a legacy of love behind us. Thank you. Please join me in prayer. Good morning, Father, Mother God, our loving Heavenly Parent. We thank you so much for the many blessings we have. And today, this weekend, and tomorrow, we're remembering the ascension of Father Moon and all the legacy that he left behind and the foundation he made. Every effort to comfort your heart and to teach us, to help us to become people of true love who can make a positive difference in this world, make a positive change starting with our own lives, with our families and with our relationships, and then with things in creation. Heavenly Parent, please continue to work in our lives that we can bear genuine fruit and that our lives can be a legacy that brings joy to you and is a blessing to the rest of the world, both from our relationship with you, from our relationship with people, and our relationship with all the beautiful and amazing things of your creation. So together as your sons and daughters, we redetermine ourselves to become those true sons and daughters of true love who multiply your goodness and your healing in this world. We thank you and offer ourselves again to you, reporting this together as blessed central families. Amen and adieu.